It's time for Coffee with Kristin and Tina. Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Kristin and Tina. We're your hosts this morning. This is Kristin Odell of Grow with KLO. I'm Tina Prigge of Vagabond Creative Studio. We are so happy to see you. So glad that you're joining us on this national or international
International.
Women's Day.
Yes, it's International Women's Day. Hey, listen, for years I have gone up to Green Bay and participated in a Women's Day event. It's called We Hub. Michelle, I'm thinking of her last name, has run it for years and she does a fabulous job. This is the first year I'm staying home in Manitowoc, but it's for a good reason. Like I have local work with local amazing people today. So
That's amazing. Kristin, I remember you talking about the last time you went, and that only feels like a couple of weeks ago. I can't believe a whole year has turned since you told us about International Women's Day.
I know, and it's kinda weird because I don't feel like it should be March yet.
True.
Like, that feels weird. Like, I'm not ready to say it's March blah, whatever. And then, we're kind of bipolar in our seasons, especially this week, right? Like, it's 40 today and sunny, but, there's some winter weather maybe still on the menu for this weekend. So, um it just is kind of a weird week, but yeah, it's International Women's Day, and, like, I don't when you hear that, Tina, what do you think?
Hmm. What do I think? What do I think when I hear that it's International Women's Day? I am happy that I when I hear that it's International Women's Day,
Right.
because I'm a woman. It's interesting that there is a special set aside day. Like I'm not exactly sure what it's meant to represent or do, right? Because like when I think about it, there's not like an International Men's Day, right? So usually when there's an international day like that or a day, it means that there's some challenge that needs to be overcome or some reason people need to come together.
Mhm.
So I definitely want to be aware of that.
Right.
And then I
Yeah,
want people to hear me roar, right?
yeah, and I mean, I can think of some amazing men in my life that are like, "I would really like to have a day dedicated to my development, learning, training, well-being, investment," right? And they're not wrong also, but let's
But men, if you're watching, this is a great opportunity to help support and raise up the women that are in your lives.
Agreed. And I don't know if Doug Odell knows this, and I don't know if he'll get to watch this back today, so I'll see what he says after he watches or listens. Sometimes he listens. But he got up this morning and he was like, "Hey, how about we go out and grab dinner tonight?" Um, so I don't know if he knows it's National Women's Day, but I was like, "Well played, sir. Well played." Because I mean, I don't know about you guys. For us, kids, business, work, sports, all the things, volunteer work, church, the list goes on, right? Family care. And sometimes like there's just not time to like, hey, how about we focus on the two of us? So I'm
And
feeling
it's
thankful.
so important to make time for that. Doug
Right.
Odell, good job. Good on ya for suggesting an impromptu date on hump day. It's fantastic.
Right. That's right.
And Kristen, too, a shout out. So recently we had the Women's Summit and it was amazing. But we couldn't have been as successful as we were without the support of our men in the background, right? Like, Mr. Cody Richards was there helping with setup and, just invaluable. Mr. Doug Odell was there totally helping us, move stuff around and
Right.
carry the heavy stuff and just so appreciative. Like, I think it's important to know that by saying that there's an International Women's Day, it's not meant to be segregationist in any way. It's just meant to take a moment to celebrate and I think come together, right? So that we can celebrate our strengths. Because you've got an article that you wanted to talk about. Should we do that now?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And I just want to say,
I
like, all of the women that participate in the Women's Summit are married and their husbands watch children, champion the topics, help set things up, like did extra stuff at home, right? Like they were our biggest champions. So shout out to all of our amazing hubbies.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Jason Prigge, thank you for talking me off the ledge every time I thought I was gonna be I literally begged him, Kristen, I'm like, "I could put a wig on you and a scarf and no one would know. You could just go up to the podium and pretend you were me."
You
He
did
said no.
amazing. You did amazing. There was no reason for you to even think about that. Um, Ethan would have appeared a taller version of Tina.
So, Kristen, from your professional opinion and also your personal opinion, I'm really interested to know your thoughts. Tell us more. What does this article, what is it about? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to all of us? Does
Right.
hybrid work help or hurt women?
So this came out today from Gallup, and again, it's International Women's Day. I'm certain this is not this is not an accident. This was in their email distribution this morning. Um, but I read this bottom sentence here, and it immediately impacted me. So it said, "Women are more likely than men to be working hybrid." So they're choosing more women choose that than men, and the data is in the article, and more likely to prefer hybrid work. But it says, but the latest Gallup data suggests that current hybrid management is failing women. Here's how to support your female employees. And what the article goes on to say is while women are choosing hybrid, I suspect that is because if anybody else is like me, I get to work from a home office throughout the day. When I take a break, I will throw a load of laundry in. I will do the dishwasher. I'll prep stuff for dinner in between sometimes, right? Like there's this ebb and flow of accomplishing homework at the same time as work. Um Working from home for me means that I can take my kids to school and pick them up. I suspect that is this, similar for a lot of women. So those are like all the benefits. Now, kind of the trade-off of that is sometimes work and home happens all the time like this, for what? 28 hours a day, 26 hours a day. So we don't actually, there's not this like, I'm going into the plant, I'm going into the office, I'm going into the bank. There's not this like designated space and time where I start work and stop work. It all kind of blends together, which is not always a good thing. And the other thing the article says, which I think is really interesting, is the engagement data coming out from Gallup says that even though more women are working in the hybrid environment, they're also leaving the workplace or not stepping into leadership roles. And they're also like the relationship part of those connections is suffering because they're not in the office. So if we think about just kind of the role that women can play in the workplace. We tend to be more emotional, yes, and there's a lot of places where that is helpful and beneficial. Um, Whether it's for decision making or navigating situations, like sometimes we need a person in there that carries that what's the feeling part of this. And then women like to connect. Like we're really good relationship builders, which men aren't as much. And so if that's absent in the workplace, then women aren't going to feel as connected. And I also suspect that's part of the reason why we see those engagement numbers dwindling. They don't feel connected to their leader, they don't feel connected to their colleagues. And so the trade off of being home and navigating that other stuff is they're not as connected. And therefore, they don't have as many opportunities for growth in the organization.
This is an interesting conundrum. Okay, so by hybrid, let's start with the definition of that. Does that mean partially working at home, partially working in an office?
Correct. Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. So, yeah, there's some arrangement where an element of the work is from home and an element of the work is on location somewhere, what dependent on it, obviously on the industry.
Got
Um,
it. And
but
it's oh,
women choose fully remote or hybrid more often than men. There's a higher percentage of women making those choices than men. And I'll throw the link in. You should be able to view the link. I'll share the full article with you guys. But yeah, that means some
yeah.
version of their work happens from home.
Okay, viewers, tell us your experience. If you have any experience working from home or hybrid work, it's interesting, Kristen, because it seems like a healthy choice, right? Like I feel like that's why women would choose hybrid or work from home because like you said, it has that dual purpose. You're there for the kids, you're there to take care of all of that home work, laundry, cleaning, tidying up, dinner preparation, anything like that. But you're right. What you lose then is that sort of camaraderie and sense of team and, that you would have if you were working in a different environment. Mary commented and she said, I work hybrid and it helps for interactions and engagement. And she says, I love it.
Mhm. Right. So, and what the article says is there might be immediate satisfaction in the hybrid model because we think we're getting more done and we're more productive. And research shows we are more productive, but it actually shows over time that we are actually less engaged in the work environment.
So I imagine, the big impact comes then too on women in leadership roles, right? It might be hard to step into like a president or a CEO role where you're, 80 hours a week almost focused and engaged solely on the company and share that time then being fully engaged and present for your family at home.
Right. 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 And if you think about, this is just like, if I have a group of people that I'm considering for a role, and I have these group of people in the office that I interact with, and they're here and I visually can see them, and then I have remote people, who am I going to feel more connected to when I make that decision?
So do you think, is it an issue of making sure that remote workers are as engaged as possible? Like, is it daily team meetings, Zoom meetings, something like that? Is there some solution?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a couple of things here. The first one that comes to mind is like you have to be super intentional if you have remote employees about how you engage with them, right? So you lose coffee talk, water cooler talk, you lose the opportunity for those quick passing in the hall conversations. And I just even think about Tina. I was at Manitowoc Coffee last week. I saw your car at your office. I popped in. We had like a 10-minute conversation and then I went on with my day, right? That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. When you're not in the office, that's what you get missed, right? And those are touches, that's relationship building, that's connections, that's getting the answers to questions that you needed in order to better understand the vision, the work, what needs to happen, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
When you're home, you either have to call or sometimes text, right, to get that answer. Or maybe you're in Zoom, but there's no typically, again, unless you're super intentional, there's not a personal element to those meetings. So you might be eyeball to eyeball through a meeting or for a meeting, but you're probably covering the topic and then you're getting off. And in some cases, especially post COVID, people are turning their cameras off even.
Right.
So, right? So, like,
And, yeah.
are you really connecting even if you're on the screen together? I don't know.
Although it feels like we're connecting, right? Like every week when we do this, Kristen, we're seeing each other on the screen. And sometimes when we meet in person, it's like, oh, I just saw you, even though really it was only through the screen. So
Correct. But we're not doing business.
true. But now, if either you or I had a traditional business or like office obligation, right? Like if we had a 9 to 5 where we had to report to an office, the cool connect where you were able to pop into my office the other day wouldn't have happened, right? Like it's only because we have these unique sort of hybrid setups.
Right. Right. But I took time to connect with you. And I think that's the point here is even if you have Zoom, even if you have phone calls, like you need to take that time to learn about that person, connect with that person, understand that person. And this goes for men or women, right? Um, there's an element that has to be built into the week to make sure that you're still connecting personally.
I love that concept, being intentional about connecting. When you popped into the office, it was totally unexpected and it completely made my day. It just lifted me up and gave me all this wind underneath my wings, right? That
Right.
personal connection is so important. Doug Odell saying, "Hey, let's have a date tonight." That is so cool and that's intentional, right? Like you have to kind of carve that time out and plan for it.
Right. And I think, if we apply this to like the employee leader space, we think about first of all what it feels like to know as an employee that your leader set aside time just to have a personal connection with you, understand like how are your kids, how what's happening at home, you know. We had a Millie had an issue with her eye the other day, like is your dog okay, right? Like these are all those things that like a leader has to purposely do via technology to be able to have those same connections, right? And it just comes so much more naturally when you're in person. Um,
Mhm.
so the leader has to make sure that they're doing that. And maybe part of that is I'm going to schedule a 45-minute call. The first 15 minutes of that, we're just going to catch up. Like that's personal connection time. And then maybe 30 minutes is actually the meeting time, right? Um,
Yeah.
I've also just seen, post COVID, like even if you have remote employees, even if they work hybrid, like there has to be moments in time where you connect and get together. Right? Bringing your team in once a quarter and having them be around the table and face to face again, because at the end of the day, humans are meant to connect and we need that time. It's not the same as just, my life wouldn't be the same if I didn't get to see Tina Prigge also outside of the
Right.
screen, right?
Right. Well, and this whole scenario that we're talking about, Kristen, more than ever, I think that the tools that you provide, like the networking with the climber cards,
Mhm.
is so valuable, right? Like that is a valuable tool that can be used in any workplace, right?
Right.
What a great way if you bring people in, once a month or something for an on-site meeting and you have this like intentional interaction, this intentional exchange of, you know, personal ideas, right? This
Right.
sharing and this growing.
Yes. And I think, and I'm like, if you do coaching with me or you do HR consulting with me, one of the things you'll hear is like, if somebody's struggling with somebody, I'm like, go out for lunch together, go grab coffee together. Like, take the time to connect with that person, even outside of just the workplace, and go have an honest conversation, right? I cannot emphasize the value in doing that. Like at the end of the day, when it's so much in the age of like shooting off comments on social media and things like that, if you really want to get to the nitty gritty, or as I told a client last week, she didn't know what I said meat and potatoes. If you want to get down to the meat and potatoes, you gotta get together and like connect.
Yeah,
I should,
connection is huge.
yeah.
Connection is huge. And Kristen, okay, I'm gonna throw a meme in there because we're talking moms, we're talking, right? So imagine no matter how fabulous you look, motherhood is being the snack holder,
Right.
right?
I love
So
that.
this balance that we're talking about isn't just something that, we're experiencing here locally, like even at the heights of fabulous, right? Look at she's got a juice box and some snacks.
Can we just keep that up for a second?
Yeah.
You guys, like we were made to have babies. I don't know what else to say, right? Like we're called into this role. So you can be the president of the company. You can be a leader of a nonprofit. You can run a board. You can do all those things. But sometimes you're still going to get called back to do stuff like this. And dad can do this too, by the way. Doug Odell does this amazing. I don't ever want to take it away from him, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
the
And the
little
the real
people.
grace is to enjoy that, right? To like when you're present with your little people to just be fully there and like, yep, I'll hold your snack box if that's what it takes.
I don't know that is this Beyonce?
Ha, I think so.
No.
I'm not sure.
She
Okay, viewers, tell us, is this Beyonce?
she looks fabulous. Don't know if she looks like she's enjoying herself. I can't decide. Is she looking chic? Is she looking annoyed? I can't decide.
She's definitely looking fabulous, but it's such a juxtaposition, right? Like the juice box and the snacks.
Right.
Typically, if you were wearing like the velvet and the jewels and stuff that she's wearing, you wouldn't go anywhere near like sticky, gooey, possibly wet. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think that validates the point though. It doesn't turn off.
Yeah.
So, and maybe this warrants like I want to go back to something you said earlier, right? President 80 hours, president 60 hours. Like there's an element of this that I think needs to be revisited if we want a more dynamic and diverse group of leaders in our country. Those are the things that we're going to have to look at. Because the reality is, men too, but women especially, we cannot do it all. You can't be a stay-at-home mom and the president of the company at the same time, right? You
Right.
can't get all the laundry done and work 80 hours a week. Like there's trade-offs. And we might have talked about this before. I hate the word balance. Like people talk about, I'm gonna grab my mouse pad for a minute, right? Like balance is like, ah, sorry, it's backwards, right? But it's not. When one thing goes up, the other thing goes down. That's the reality. So I don't know about you guys. You tell me if I'm wrong, but like when my work is busy, guess what slips at home? Like, Doug, dude, I need you to help with laundry, please, right? Or the kids need running or whatever, right? And then sometimes it comes back up the other way. Doug's busy. I got to carry a bigger load, right? But it's very rarely does it look like this. Maybe never. Let's just say that. Can we say that? It
Yeah.
never balances. It's always one way or the other.
Viewers, if you have figured out how to achieve that perfect balance, please tell us in the chat or tell us how we can meet for coffee so you can tell us more.
Yeah, I would love to if somebody thinks they have it perfect, I'd love to hear about that.
Okay, so I did share that meme and I think it's Beyonce, but I would love somebody to confirm. But it just goes to show that, like, with memes, there's an awful lot of interpretation, right? And so I love Winnie the Pooh, right? And this is like, it says, me showing my mom a funny meme. My mom. This is so exactly me. I feel like when my son shows me these memes, I'm like, What? Like, I need an interpretation. I have no idea what you're talking about." Um, and what I've discovered is that the memes that his generation kind of find funny are levels deep. Like when I really ask him to explain it, he'd be like, "Well, this is funny because there was this other meme that did this that was based on another meme that said this, based on another meme that somebody had made a mistake in or something, right?" And
Right.
then I'm like, "Oh." And then if you listen to like this hour-long explanation, right? Like more life than you'll never get back. Then you can be like, "Oh, dude, that's funny." But it take you like have to have all of this tertiary knowledge to
Right.
appreciate it.
No, I this brings up a good point. So I've been reading The Handmaid's Tale. Have you read that?
I have.
So I'm like near the end. I'm like in this the scientific report out at the end of it. And I woke up this morning still like, what in the heck did I just read? Like I have so many questions. So I'm open for a coffee talk on this, but my mind is like, I am in a WTF state about the book. Let's just put it that way.
I
Did you read
probably read it I probably read it 25 years ago, and I'm still in that state. But I think that there are some really cautionary things that just to be kept, be
Yeah,
aware of. Like,
yes. At the
we
same
don't
time,
wanna ever lose free agency over
yeah,
who we are.
yes. But I'm also like, was there a beginning? Like, was there an end? Like, what did they call it in the book where it's like the height of the moment, the height of
The
the
climax.
yeah, like, was there a
Yeah.
climax there? Did I miss it? Like, do
It's
I
like it's not neatly packaged, and I think because there's not, like, a good conclusion.
yeah,
But,
yeah,
okay, there is a comment here. The whole thing doesn't fit on screen, so I'm gonna read it. Cassandra Pierce said, "What I wonder and always had an issue with in the past was separating work and personal life while building a relationship. Like while having an issue with a boss in the past, she would tell me too much and deep personal things, and to the point I thought it would be unprofessional. It made me not want to connect with her on my personal level. Instead, surface level. Then I noticed conflicts happening at work because the balance of sharing wasn't reciprocated, if that makes sense."
it totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And I think one of the I mean, so some of this is like oversharing happens, right? And that can be really uncomfortable. Um, my question would be like one of the Gallup questions on engagement is I have a best friend at work. And then that is an indicator of like I have people really struggle with that question by the way, but it's really about like I have a connection with somebody at work where trust, deep trust exists. I can go to that person when I'm struggling, and that person can help me move through it to a higher place. Okay. So it's super like high functioning, like the best teams do this. And without personal connection, it's almost impossible for you to say that you have a best friend at work. So as it pertains to a comment like this, was it your own perception on what she was sharing that prevented you from having a relationship? Or your own definition of professional?
Yeah, that's a good question. But and I totally get it, Cassandra, because, when I worked in a corporate job, sometimes it felt like, okay, sharing all this personal stuff doesn't even have a place, right? Like, that's good. Cat's great. I got to focus on this, right? Like, I've got this job to do. I've got this production that has to be accomplished. Like, if we meet over lunch, great. Tell me more. But otherwise, like,
Yeah.
I can't.
And I think that brings up a good point, right? So we should all have permission to say, I'm working on a big project I really need to focus on right now. Would you like to schedule lunch or breakfast or something, coffee in a couple of weeks when I'm able to move through this and we can have that time and space for that. I think that's should be perfectly acceptable. Excuse me.
Bless you. Yeah, and that's a really good point. And Cassandra, I just want to say thank you for those thoughtful remarks.
I
And
love
when we were
it.
talking
She just
about,
got married. We should say congratulations to her.
yeah,
Congrats.
congratulations. That is happy.
You
And
seem
then
happy.
Natalie had commented about Winnie the Pooh. She said, "That's what I look like when my daughter tells me how to do something new on my iPhone." Oh, I hear you.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. These issues are like not easy to navigate, and I think each situation and circumstance is so different, and that's where like a lot of times these are some of the things that people call me for coaching, and they say, help me figure this out. And I love being able to help people navigate it, because at the end of the day, like, we don't want people to have conflict at work, or we don't want people to feel like they can continue to advance at work because there's an element of it that's preventing them from doing that. Like, the boss wants you to win, they should want you to win, and you want you to win, right? And so we need, like, what's the best path forward for both people to be able to make sure they're successful and the organization's successful. And that's tricky.
And the first best step is talking about it, right? Like, here we are having this frank dialogue. We don't know necessarily the solution or the answers, but it
Right.
starts by having the shared dialogue and finding out the different perspectives that people are approaching from.
Right. And I think sometimes I just had a meeting with somebody last week about this. They were meeting with somebody that they perceive to have conflict with. I said, invite that person for coffee, like, start your day early next week. Like, let's get this stuff out on the table. And I said, the best thing that you can do is just be humble and say, here's some things that I'm struggling with. And here's some things that I've already put into place that I'm trying to help meet your needs. How can we move forward? And I got an update yesterday from that person that said that was an extremely productive meeting. There was a lot of honesty, like, we both were able to speak truth or what felt like truth, and they had a plan to go forward. And I know that, like, that maybe sounds like apple pie in the sky, like, it's not always gonna be that great, but I thought, yeah, there's opportunities when we just are humble and admit, "Hey, this is the role I play, and here's what I'm willing to do, and how can we be better?"
Yeah, that open dialogue, right? Without that, if it's just like what ifs, if it's just, thinking about a situation, it can get built up in a way that is not productive.
Yeah. Oh, I
Okay,
love this.
Cassandra had another comment, and again, I'm going to read it because it doesn't all show up on screen. She said, "Thanks for answering that question and talking about it. It's possible it was my perception, and maybe she was turning to me as a friend without me realizing it, or me communicating with her about it. So many possibilities. Though I'm happy I work at home now, so don't have those interesting things happening. Thanks for the wedding shout out." Oops.
I love it. And then Natalie just shared a big, question too, or a big comment.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Natalie says, "I had a great position with a large corporation, which is no longer in Nina long ago. My then 1-year-old had pneumonia. My job was threatened because I was taking too much time off to tend to her. My husband at the time would not take time off because he was just starting a career. My kids were way more important than my job. I chose to not have vacations and be with my kids, so I became a stay at home mom a few years later.
Mhm. Yeah. Again, real life, right? And I think there's bigger corporations don't always have as much flexibility, right? But we're seeing some movement in like people have real things like their relationship with their kids and illnesses that they're going to need to care to. So if there's an opportunity for flexibility or to meet those needs and keep somebody employed, and, like in the age of a lack of workforce and turnover and people, like the labor market's tough right now. Companies are starting to make flexible options to be able to deal with stuff like that in a healthy way so that they can retain employees. It's really, really important.
Yeah. Natalie, thanks so much for sharing that part of your story. And I think it's extra important sharing things like that, right? Because it helps others understand, oh, I'm not alone in these challenges, right?
Yes. Right. And by the way, even though it's International Women's Day, I'm going to say this that it's okay to take a couple years off to take care of your kids because you can go back to work and you can be a president and you can do all those things. Like, I left the workforce 8, 9 years ago to try being a stay at home mom because I didn't know if it was going to work. And I was a regional HR manager in Milwaukee. And I just said, it's now or never. We're moving, right? And I learned very quickly, not only did I get to start my own business, which I never planned on, but I learned very quickly that in the age that we're at, women absolutely can jump back into the workforce and have as many, if not more, opportunities when they come back.
Ah, that's so good to know. That is great to know. Okay, International Women's Day. We have to sign off and leave you, but we're going to leave you with this last meme. Hey, good moms let you lick the beaters. Great moms turn them off first.
I love it.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Thanks for your great input. You've been watching Coffee with Kristen and Tina. We're so thankful to Just Orthodontics for sponsoring this episode. We look forward to seeing you next time. Keep it cool on the coolest coast, everyone.
Bye, guys.